Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is November the 2nd in the year of our Lord 2023. And, nothing has changed from the last podcast to now, to my fellow Americans and especially to all my fellow Democrats out there in common sense, independents, and Republicans. Nothing has changed. We have a democracy to save. Now, our colleagues on the right have got it together and they have elected a speaker. But where we find ourselves disappointed at here at Soluble is that, it's always to the extreme right. There's no middle ground here when it comes to the Republican Party and their leadership. That they demonstrated themselves, not because we're here at Soluble or stating it. Nothing that they've demonstrated themselves, by all accounts. Especially Congressman Matt Gaetz. This is the new speaker. He's already been labeled as MAGA Mike. MAGA Mike Johnson. And what should concern us as American citizens is that we have congressmen in office like Congressman Gaetz who just don't seem to get it. Of course, MAGA is on the rise, is on the ascension. To quote the congressman here, MAGA is on the ascension within the Republican Party, no doubt about it. But where we should be, disappointed and alarmed at the same time is that the congressman doesn't seem to realize that MAGAism is on the ascension in the Republican Party, but not in United States governing body as a whole. Is it on the ascension? And he either didn't get the memo as far as the will of the American people, or they're just stubbornly and insistently trying to shove something down the throats of the American people that maybe this time around with the vote they'll get it. Who knows? Maybe they won't. That remains to be seen. And speaking of the vote, here we are a little less than a year out from the next presidential election. A year and maybe 2 or 3 days from now, we'll be holding the next presidential election to choose a leader to take us forward as a country and as citizens, for the next 4 years. And at the same time, here we are with the third. We don't know if it's going to be the final because the former president is pushing for the debates to come to an end. But we're approaching the third presidential debate. If I'm not mistaken, if my facts are correct, that'll be coming up on November the 8th of this month. So a little more than a year out from the next presidential election and a little more than a week away from the next Republican primary debate. Now, as we've stated before, as far as Democrats, we have to rally around a leader. We have to rally around a leader. We can't get into the tug of war, the titty for tat, back and forth of is the president too old to lead? Is the time past him? Is he capable of leading? We have to get the question marks out of our head and rally around the party leader and trust and believe that if said leadership is not capable or up to the task, that we really have a president in office now who loves this country to the point where he will bow out gracefully, unlike what we see on the right. We have to know and understand this, that we have a current president in office who, if he's not up to the task, again, I say, will bow out gracefully. Now, our position here at Soluble is that the perception does not meet the reality. Would a president who is showing signs of his age or that's too old for the job have gas prices at what they are now? have the unemployment rate at what we see now. These do not look like signs of a aging and struggling commander-in-chief. What does the monthly jobs report looks like? What does the GDP, gross domestic product, what does it look like when the reports come out? So none of these things point to a president whose time has passed, as far as being too old for the job. We have a commander-in-chief who's experienced, who knows the ways of Washington, who knows how to tweak, turn, fine tune in the event of inflation. A lot of the argument was, and it could have been right for my colleagues on the right, that, the Democrats flooded the economy or flooded the American people with a lot of money, which turned up inflation. But then what happened? The president come right back and realizing his error, and started, adjusting the interest rate, tinkering with the interest rate, how much we're going to raise it, how much we're going to lower it, and at the same time, listening to leading financial experts and leading economists who are experts in the subject matter of what it takes to, keep the economy strong, keep the dollar strong and relevant, and at the same time, we're able to pay our bills on time. None of this, by what we see, not simply or only by what we're stating here at Soluble, but by what we're seeing. We're seeing democracy in action. We're seeing a party with the idea of building from the middle class out, governing day in and day out, for whatever situation arises. Now, further evidence, if you will, that we have a commander-in-chief who listens to the will of the people and makes a decision accordingly, to righteousness. The president now is calling on Israel to scale back, to implement a ceasefire and entertain the thought of a ceasefire, listening to the will of the people. Now, of course, no president is going to satisfy everybody all the time. That's not going to happen. But isn't it refreshing? Isn't it refreshing, like a breath of fresh air, where we have a president who listens to the heartbeat and or pulse of the people and what they're saying? That's very important, as far as where we've came from to now. And so, we're entertaining at this point in time, at this day and point in time in politics, we're entertaining, the spending bill again, aid for Israel. We're debating aid for Ukraine. And, by all accounts, from, politicians on the left and right, there should be a package here where aid is lumped in together, to go towards some for Ukraine and some for Israeli defense. And, here we go, with a new speaker, and the bill that they brought out, the legislation that they proposed, for the next spending bill is tying, of all things, is tying, spending cuts as far as funding for the IRS. Now, if you've been following us here at Soluble, we've already stated before the midterm elections of 2022, we had Republicans, from the left and right expecting this red wave, and the border was all the rage. Inflation, the prices at the grocery store. This was before the midterms, to remind you. And that's what, our mission here is at Soluble, as part of the way as of trying to solve, is it keeping the American people, abreast of what's going on, because, things can change, and they change so fast until it makes your head spin till you really don't know what's going on here. But before the midterms, The border was all the rage, the southern border. We have no southern border. It's being overrun. And the elections came, the midterms came, and they went. There was no red wave. But there was, when all the dust settled, a majority in the House of Representatives for our colleagues on the right. And at that same time, what did they do then? One of the first things that a piece of legislation that they wanted to pass was cuts, if you will, to IRS funding. They wanted to slash it. I'm not sure about how much. We don't have the exact numbers here, but here we go again. Rinse, wash, and repeat. We have a new speaker in the House, and of all the things that he can tie to funding for foreign allies who are fighting in wars or fighting for their independence, of all the things that he can tie to this spending proposal, is a cut to the IRS. Now, we know that that party on the right is for that 1%, and we don't begrudge millionaires and billionaires in this country. But what is the problem with everybody paying their fair share? I mean, this really does sound like, in spite of what they may say about the border, to stoke fear, to maybe gin up their vote, to say that Democrats are letting the country be taken over or what have you. It keeps coming back to the IRS. From then to now, here we are, with everything that we have going on in this country and in the world. The world is practically on fire with wars and rumors of wars. We have an opioid crisis in the country. The economy is always a work in progress. We have crime. We have the education of our children to be concerned about. As far as where we rank with reading, math, and our scores versus other countries abroad. But of all the things, climate change, wreaking havoc on a regular basis on the American landscape, and homeowners and property owners, included. But out of all of this, out of all these things that are happening, somehow our colleagues on the right see the urgency in, slashing funding for out of all things, the IRS. Out of all the other problems that we have. Now, our position here at Soluble is that this, really sounds like leave my rich friends alone. That's what it sounds like. And as I said, we know where both parties have positioned themselves and their ideals. We have the right, conservatives, Republicans, compassionate conservatives, fiscal conservatives, who believe in, letting the wealth flow from the top down with something called trickle-down economics. And on the left, we have a party with an idea of building from the middle class and everyone paying their fair share. Now, this is what's on the ballot, believe it or not. Now, leading experts looking at, the House bill that's come out has said that it would add to the deficit. What does that really say about a fiscal conservative who, during this speakership crisis here just a couple of weeks ago, you had House Republicans coming out, all over the place, stating that we take in $5 trillion and we spend $7 trillion. If they really care about the deficit, they will leave the funding that the president has set aside as far as the Inflation Reduction Act. They will leave that money in place to let the IRS do their job, to go after tax cheats. I mean, I acknowledge here myself right here at Soluble now that I have to do a better job of preparing my taxes and paying my fair share. So it's one thing to say it. It's a whole nother thing to do it. And so, we're looking to clean house, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. Our position here at Soluble is that we can no longer afford to, while we have party loyalty, while, our position here at Soluble is that we're staunchly and we're adamantly in the Democratic circle. We're constantly voting Democrat. Because we like the policies. That's all. No more, no less. And we don't begrudge Republicans. But they've gone so far right that the party platform is now unrecognizable. It's unrecognizable. And so we're not trying to play party politics here. We're trying to simply bridge the gap where, both sides of the aisle can come together in a way that, Reagan and Tip O'Neill did it. That's one example there. And if they did it then, surely the Republican Party should be able to come to grips after a lack of a red wave in 2022 and respect the will of the American people. That rogue right is not where we the people want to be or want to see our government officials take, our Constitution. And so are we doom and gloom? If we were in China, a great possibility. North Korea, most certainly. But we're here in America. We're in America. So it's not doom and gloom. And it's now or never at this point in time in history. We're 247 years in as a country. We've been through a lot. We've came from a long ways. We have a bloody past that we're not proud of, that we have acknowledged, our wrongdoings in every aspect of it, whether it was slavery, whether it was genocide against Native Americans, whether it was Jim Crow America, whether it was Japanese internment camps during World War II for Asians living in this country. We have looked at, our sins of the past, if you will. And, we've been able to acknowledge our wrongdoing, make it right, or push to make it right and move forward as a country. That's what makes America great. That's what makes America great. Now, we're supporting the President of the United States, regardless of a party affiliation. I mean, and what that means is when there's a Republican who is occupying the Oval Office, our position here at Soluble is that even though we're staunchly in the Democratic corner, we want to see said Republican president do good. So, we sat back with bated breath to say, okay, let's take a look-see at this MAGA approach, at this Make America Great Again approach. Giving it the benefit of the doubt, rooting for a Republican president to win, to succeed in his mission to make America great again. Because at the end of the day, after elections are all said and done, we rally behind the leader. And, for the first time in American history, as we all saw what happened in January, of 2021, we saw what happened. For the first time in American history, a peaceful transfer of power was interrupted. Now, as the saying goes, it takes two to tango. And so, regardless of party affiliation, our mission here at Soluble is to, call balls and strikes as we see them, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. And so, we have Republicans with a House majority, and Democrats controlling the other 2/3 of government. Now, one would think, a politician with common sense would say, okay, let's look at the results after the election. Let's look at the path that we have went down, and carefully gauge and analyze and take a look, see, are we doing the will of the American people? Do we have the support of the American people behind us? Now, it's safe. I think it's safe to say, from our position here, political position here at Soluble, that MAGA is right now in the minority. But our Republican colleagues failed to get the memo, and so Democrats, what do we do? Where do we go? It's not just to the polls again or waiting for 2024, while our Republican colleagues on the right sow seeds of discord. We have to get the message out. We have to get the message out. We have to stand on our principles and our values, and what's actually happening on the ground, regardless of what you hear coming from Republican circles. Because if we're listening, we're hearing from our colleagues on the right that if the inflation is going to drive America into another recession, and sadly, regrettably, it's almost like they were rooting for it. We've never seen this before in American politics. When the former president was in office, former President Trump, as I carefully observed, I saw no Democrat, rooting for the president to fail or trying to stow stumbling blocks in his way at every turn. You seen Speaker Pelosi, Minority Leader Schumer, they protested, funding for the wall because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. We need a common sense immigration policy there. But my point is, I haven't seen my fellow Democrats on the left, pushing back on Republican Party politics unless they felt like, it wasn't good for America and its citizens. As far as, a party platform that's set up to fight for the middle class first. They're doing what they said they would do. They're doing what they said they would do, when they were on the campaign trail. Now, this is where we're at this current point in time in American history. And so, the question that we're going to put out there for you tonight from us here at Soluble is, can we close the divide? And how do we do it? How do we do it? You see it coming from our colleagues on the right that it's a two-tier system. It's only a two-tier system. And please listen to me carefully here. If I'm wrong, we welcome correction here at Soluble, because at the end of the day, we're trying to solve. But the only way that we should look and agree that it is a two-tier system in the Democratic Party have put someone up for nomination. And they had won the nomination and the Oval Office who was just as corrupt and crooked as the former president. Who was it? Excluding, the current commander-in-chief now, which is Joseph R. Biden, excluding him. What Democratic president, before the former President Trump, there was President Obama. You didn't see the former president, Obama having to have so many lawyers around all the time. Everywhere you turn, north, south, east, and west, there's a lawyer waiting. Or he's wrapped himself, he's enveloped himself around a gang of lawyers who change at any given moment because, former President Obama is not paying him if they're not giving him winning results in the courtroom. Where is the two-tier system? We can only, and we should only agree that with our Republican colleagues, and or if it was Democrat, we should only agree that there's a two-tier system when we're putting the same quality of candidate on the ballot, wins the nomination, gains the Oval Office, and is doing the same thing. The former President Trump's reputation as a businessman is very much up for debate now. The air is filled with question marks surrounding his, measurements of success. And there are more questions than answers. Has he inflated the value of his properties? When it comes time to get a loan and gaining advantages in getting the loan, have he deflated the properties when it's time to pay taxes on it? Right now, all leading indicators are that he has. All leading indicators are that he has. Back to former President Obama from the Democratic side, former President William Jefferson, Bill Clinton from the Democratic side. Which one played fast and loose with, classified information? Which one of these former presidents got beside themselves and felt as if, they could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and their poll numbers wouldn't change? Which one of these former Democratic presidents? And so you have one side electing one of the most, if not the most, flawed individual ever to occupy the Oval Office. Nothing like this has happened on the Democratic side, in Democratic circles. So there's nothing to compare it to. If we're going to have a two-tier system, then we have to have similar activity coming from both parties, and only one party is getting called out or held criminally liable for it, and one party is not. Now, of course, we have our colleagues on the right trying to invent or create, if you will, a Biden crime family. But thus far, all of the witnesses that they have brought forth have said that we're not there yet. That we're not there yet. But yet and still, our colleagues on the right want to say that it's a two-tier system. And so as Democrats, our job is to push back, dispel the notion, and push back harder and harder. Because it's not so. And, our democracy is not going to be made stronger off of falsehoods, lies, alternative facts. Doing everything we can to suppress the vote, stifle or silence the media, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. We welcome these freedoms and these institutions because, it keeps politicians honest. It keeps politicians honest. Ask Senator Menendez. Ask Senator Bob Menendez out of New Jersey if he thinks it's a two-tier system. They're coming for him, and if the evidence is there, Senator Menendez should be held accountable. He should be held accountable. Now, we don't know what the future holds. There's no crystal ball that only God knows. But what we currently have with this American democracy is, it's one of the best, if not the best, systems of government that's ever been known to man, because the power is in the hands of we the people. It's in the hands of we the people. And so the fact that the Republicans don't get it, that they're moving further and further to the right, shouldn't, make us lose sleep at night or cause us to become angry or disgruntled or confused. honest to goodness politicians wouldn't want the American people to lose hope and lose faith, in our politics and in our institutions that govern us. Because it's the fabric or the fiber or the thread that holds us together. The common democracy that we have, the system of checks and balances. And so any honest to goodness politicians wouldn't want to undermine that. What the former president is doing and has attempted to do and done is shameful. It's cynical. It's totally opposite of what a leader who loves his country would be doing. It's totally opposite. Richard Nixon all those years ago bowed out. He didn't try to double down. This was a man who loved his country. Of course, he loved power also. We know this. History has told us this. But at the end of the day, we saw Richard Nixon, regardless of the love that he had for power, have more love for his country and resign the office and step aside. And that's the difference between then and now. And so, we can do one or two things. We can rock the vote again, as we're approaching the next election cycle. Or, we can sit on the sidelines and risk losing the sound democracy that we have. Now, by all leading polling indicators, the former president is right now one step away from the Republican nomination for president of the United States of America. Again, in spite of all this happened. In spite of all this happened. And so, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Sadly, this is what it looks like when you have a reality show former president, TV personality come to Washington. And now, the Republican Party is somewhat the laughing stock of the American people. They're hipping, Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, to be a meme producing machine. And this is not just a laughing stock for us, the American people. It's being seen around the world. Why? We can't get our Republican colleagues, to reach across the aisle to look and see, where they're at this point in time in history, and do the right thing is, it's really a head scratcher. But this is a result of one bad apple in the form of former President Trump not being taken away, and the whole bunch is spoiled. And the whole bunch is spoiled. If there was any common sense there, Congressman Gates would understand that, MAGAism is on the rise within the Republican ranks. But it's not what the American people want. And if it's not what the American people want, then we have to take a step away from it. We have to step back from it and rebrand ourselves. You have a representative out of Colorado, Mr. Ken Buck. He's not seeking office. Come the next election cycle, he's bowing out, and by his own accounts, as a Republican, he's telling us that the Republican Party has lost its way. He's telling us that, and so I know that the vast majority of Americans hear that. Republican voters along with Democratic independent voters alike. But, I guess the question is, can Republican voters get that across to Republican politicians when they go back to their district, and they're talking with their constituents? Can they get it across to them? Now, we feel like here at Soluble, after the next election cycle, which is coming up next year, this time, and we send this message, we create this blue wave, we think that it will bring, common sense Republicans back to the middle, back to a position of a moderate Republican versus an extreme Republican, where there's give and take, where there's compromise. That's the way it's always been. You have, and this may sound biased, correct me if I'm wrong, point it out to me, show me evidence that is happening in Republican, excuse me, show me evidence that is happening in Democratic circles. And what I mean by that is you have, what has happened since, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, and his contract with America. Republicans have gone further and further away from compromise and from reaching across the aisles, the way it's always been. They've gone further and further away. And so here we are, where, we have the current Biden administration. And everyone may not agree with what's going on, with the Biden administration. That's the American way. But what are they going to push back on when it comes to things like, we have low gas prices. Yeah, they went up somewhat, over the summer. But it wasn't, a great deal of increase there. What are they going to say there when it comes to the job numbers? What are they going to? What can they give us something better? Because that's what we, the American people, deserve. That's what we should be expecting. Not these phony baloney, pie in the sky investigations of a sinister plot from a sinister family by a sinister guy who, before he threw his hat into the ring as running against former President Trump, he was just a walking gaffe machine. By all accounts in Republican circles, he was just a walking gaffe machine. But now, all of a sudden, in order to create something that's not there, as it relates to a two-tier system, to create a two-tier system, we have to create an investigation and create, a crime family. But all these creations, they mean nothing. And we, the American people, should realize this. We have to. All these creations of a crime family, of money being moved over here, and money being paid under the table over there. All this creation is nothing without evidence. And this is what the framers put in place. And this is why. This is why it has to be based on evidence. Because anyone can say anything. We have no evidence. While the former president is in court and you have prosecutors questioning his numbers, questioning his accounting practices, talking to the people who, were leading the financial charge for the Trump organization, who was the pen man, who was the pen and paper pusher. We've seen former lawyer Cohen come forward. Now, we know where he was at in 2015, 2016. He was the president's fixer. And, no one's above the law. But, that's where the former president was leading people. And to a certain extent, still to this day. But look at it for what it is. Look at it for what it is. Okay, you're the president's fixer. But the evidence is going to show that, there's something sinister going on here. There's something going on that's not on the up and up. And the system works. The system works. We're looking for it in Democratic circles. We see it in Senator Menendez from New Jersey. The wheels of justice turn slow. But at the end of the day, when they stop rolling, when they stop turning, they have arrived at justice. And anyone doing wrongdoing, being judged by a jury of their peers and having to pay their debt to society. This system works. So, as Democrats, as I said, we have to push back, on any of the falsehoods that are coming forward. Now, we look forward to the next Republican primary debate, which is coming up on November the 8th. Former Governor Haley of South Carolina is gaining ground. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's going to be 4 candidates here. Former Governor Haley, Governor DeSantis, Ramaswamy, and if I'm not mistaken, former Governor Chris Christie. And it's sad what they're being put through by the former president. He won't show up, and now they're in a position where they can't push back against him too hard because in the beginning they defended him so hard. So it's like, how can it be from the time of in 10 years? In less than 10 years, the former president comes on the scene and he's so great. He's the man to lead America. He's the right man, for the right time. And now, they can't unhitch from him as much as they want to. They can't unhitch from him. So, we look forward to the next Republican primary debate and setting the record straight. You may not like, Democratic politics, so there's a Republican circles there. There's a Republican Party. There's an independent party. Everyone, each party has a vision or ideal as, how best to govern America moving forward. And we have the power of the vote. So let's use it before we lose it. And it really is that plain and simple, because right now we have a fractured democracy where we've sat on the sidelines and, the former president was able to mock the disabled, talk down on war heroes, patriots, instigate violence, brag about sexually assaulting women, and become the president of the United States of America. And so, with the bar being lowered, to that level, it's up to us as Democrats. Now we brought it back up. We brought it back up with a president once again who has a love for country first. And one of the things, and let's just be honest here, because we're always trying to solve. We're trying to, bring two parties, opposing parties with opposing views together for compromise in order to do the will of the American people in government. And so as Democrats, we have a backup system here in America. We have a backup system. So, if we're distracted by, the president's age, he's too old, well, then what do we have a backup for? And this is one of the, for all we know, this could be one of the major reasons why, the Republican Party is in such an uproar with the president's age, because they know what? Vice President Kamala Harris is one heartbeat away from being commander-in-chief. Now, whether you like her or not, that's the backup plan. We knew the president's running mate when he put her on the ticket. We know what we voted for. And so here we have a system where we have a president being backed up by a vice president. And if you don't like it, of course, you're gonna go vote your choice in 2024. But there's no need for alarm here. And this is to my fellow Democrats and common sense independents and or Republicans. Why should we be alarmed at the president's age when we have a backup plan and Vice President Kamala Harris? If you don't like our politics, that's fine. We have an election every 2 to 4 years. That's fine. But for us as Democrats to get caught up in the hype of the president's age, and it's a factor, nothing can be further than the truth. The system is working. The system is working. Vice President Harris knows that, she's one heartbeat away from the Oval Office. And she's prepared. She has to be preparing herself constantly. She has to be preparing herself constantly. And so the system works. But if we as Democrats fall into this trap and, start to get into the mire of a talking point that of the president's age, then we're losing. We're beginning to lose right then, because we're playing right into the hands of our colleagues on the right. And we have to be the party of common sense. We have to be the bigger party. But as I said, and it can't be a tit for tat. But we see things that are we see things that are being said about politicians here on the left. When it comes to the president's age. And we see things that are happening on the right that are not being, talked about as much or vocalized as much as far as being a concern. We've seen Senator McConnell freeze up at the podium on more than one occasion. We've seen him freeze up before the press. And this is, but like I said, this is not tit for tat politics. Where we should be, now we're pushing back and saying like look at Senator McConnell. No, as Democrats, we should be the bigger party, and we should, support the senator, and look for him, trust him to do the right thing as far as being able to serve in a capacity of minority leader, and trust and believe that if he's not up to the task, then he will do the right thing as far as country is related. We have to trust and believe that, and be patient. But if the Senate minority leader, it becomes more of a problem with his health concerns, and he doesn't do the right thing as it relates to the country, once again, we have the power of the vote. The people in Kentucky will speak loud and clear. We have to trust and believe that as Democrats, as patriotic, country first loving Democrats. And we have to take that high road. You see former President Trump, he's talking about, President Biden's age and what might be perceived as his inability to lead and or serve. But we also see the former president, where he's on the stump, he's on the campaign trail, and sometimes, we're wondering what's going on up top. He's talking about, the fact that World War II could be started. A world war that ended in, if I'm not mistaken, in 1945, in the mid 1940s. But yet, here's the former president talking about, if he's not careful, that the current commander-in-chief, Joseph R. Biden, is going to start World War III. The former president is on the campaign trail, leaning into the podium and talking about how he defeated Obama, who he never ran against. Does he not know that he defeated former Senator Clinton? Does he not know that World War II has come and gone and that the world has moved on? What can he tell us, about Adolf Hitler, Neville Chamberlain? What can he tell us, that he most admires about Winston Churchill? But once again, we have to be the bigger party here. We know that it's just noise coming from the right. But if we're not careful as Democrats, we will let it be a distraction. And Republican politicians, one thing they know is that if they hammer away at a certain talking point over and over and over, that it will begin to wear on you as Democrats and independent politicians. They're counting on it. And so, it's up to us as the American people to show them something other than. And by rocking the vote here in 2024, we hope that we can bring common sense Republicans, from the far right back to the middle ground of compromise. We can't say that it's politicians who love their country when the American people have spoken, and then you have politicians who don't want to cooperate with the will of the majority. The American people have sent Democrats to the Oval Office and to lead the Senate because that's what they trust more. And so we should stand firm on what is the heartbeat of the nation at this point in time, which is America is best led by a Democratic politician at this point in time, and support the Democratic platform unabashedly, unashamed, unflinching, building from the middle class out. Now, as I said, where do we see that we need to raise the alarm? We've given you two-party ideals on how America is best governed when it comes to foreign policy. We've given you two ideals on how America is best governed when it comes to the economy and jobs creation. If you look back on these former podcasts, when it comes to job creation, as we've stated, they're similar. They both both parties can create jobs, decent paying jobs for the American people. But on the one hand, as we stated, on the right, you're going to get pollution with that job. You could get cancer with that job because regulations are out the window. Everything is deregulated, and that's the difference. You could be in unsafe work environments on a regular basis. You could have things that are being pumped into the atmosphere or pumped into our water, on a regular basis. So you will have good jobs. As far as Democratic support, you're going to have good jobs, decent paying jobs, but you're going to have protections put in place for the environment and the American people. What's the problem there? Versus the right, where you're going to have jobs. Same thing. You're going to have jobs, decent paying jobs for the American people, but you're going to have more pollution, more cancer risk, more risk of climatological disasters. It's going to come with your good paying job. When it comes to foreign policy, two ideals once again by two parties moving forward towards the 2024 election. You're either going to have a president who comes in from the right, who wants to wag the dog, who wants to do something like strike in Yemen and get one of our sons and daughters killed in a country where we have nothing at stake, but we have nothing that's worth an American life. But the former president comes into office and the chair is barely warm before he wants to launch an attack against Yemen. And so there you have it with foreign policy. On the left, you have, a sound foreign policy where we're trying to build coalitions with our foreign allies in order to prevent bloodshed, prevent war. We see what's going on in the Middle East. We need a steady hand at the controls. killing and violence on both sides is wrong. And there's no way that we as Democrats should, not push our president to make sure that there's a ceasefire here. Because the children that we see, the little Palestinian children that we see on the news on a regular basis when it comes to these airstrikes, it's not worth, it's not worth it to lose for these young children to lose their lives in order to get to Hamas. It's just not worth it. There's got to be a better way. And here's by all, explanations from our Israeli counterparts that they have the superior military. They have the tactical advantage. They have the best technological equipment where you shouldn't have to be killing so many young children in your quest to, stamp out Hamas. Foreign policy, once again, a steady hand on the controls versus a president with a hair trigger mentality, anxious to put another notch under his belt on his gun holster or what have you. The next thing we're going to move forward into, which we haven't discussed yet, but we will be in the coming days, is education. This will be the third. We've done the economy. We've done foreign policy. Education. Once again, two parties with two ideals. We know that by all accounts from what we heard on the right, some, if not all of the candidates want to shut down the Department of Education. They want to shut it down. And that's not to say that, because we're staunch Democrats, we believe that the left has all the answers for education in America. But, it's obvious that we're behind. We're behind other nations in where we rank in reading, math, in important subjects like this that will affect American dominance, American leadership, around the world going into the future. And so we feel like at this critical point in time, when it comes to education, there's no time for cuts or subtractions away from the educational system here in America. If anything, we should take, a long, wise look at it and see, how we can make it better. If it's broken, how can we fix it? That's always been the American way. We've never give up, turn our backs, or just, threw our hands up in disgust or frustration and giving up. So if the education system in America is broken, fractured, or what have you, then there has to be a way to fix it. Because if we as humans broke it, then we as humans should definitely be able to fix it. So we're gonna, we're gonna research the facts when it comes to education in America, and that will be our next talking point. Going into the 2024 election, we have plenty more to discuss. Different views or ideas on fighting crime, different views and or ideas on dealing with climate change, the opioid crisis, women's rights in this country. We have so much more to discuss. And so we look forward to having those discussions with you, the American people, in a quest in order to try and make politics less polarized and more of reach across the aisle for compromise. We may not get everything, but we got something. The other side may not get everything they want, but they got something. This is how American politics has worked as far back as one can remember. And when it hasn't, we've always found a way to get back to common sense governing, where we're working across the aisle with our colleagues who may have opposing views. So stay tuned. In the coming days, we'll be discussing our next topic, because education is definitely on the ballot, and it's of critical importance. Teacher pay. the quality of schools, we're giving to our students to come in and learn. School protection against violence. We have school shooting uh commonplace here in America. So there's a lot of things that are working in motion, moving parts, if you will, as it relates to how we can make education better and take out the negatives. It is something that, like I said, we've always done in America. We've always been able to take something that was good and make it better. And of what more importance do we have, than educating our young and preparing them, to lead the country in the future? So stay tuned. And as I said, we have the Republican debates coming up next week. Let's look to see what, if anything, that we can get behind as Democrats. Because as I said, we're not going to solve our current political climate of polarization, finger pointing, and governing with folded arms, if we don't get past party politics and, and get to the point of what's good for America. If the Inflation Reduction Act is good for the country, then let it be said, regardless if there's a Democrat or a Republican in the Oval Office. If former President Trump coming into office and the first thing he does is cut taxes, and that's good for us on the whole as a country, then let it be said. But let's not, demonize either side for, speaking what they believe is the truth. Let's not demonize it. Let it be spoken. Let that opinion be spoken, and we can have that debate. We can have that discussion. And what we've always been able to do at the end of that debate or at the end of that discussion is come up with a common sense solution and our plan that moves America forward in a positive way, for the country and American citizens at large, on a whole. That's what it's all about. And that's our mission here at Soluble. We thank you for joining us tonight. And we hope that we've been informative, anything eye-opening. We're encouraging, all of our fellow Democrats, common sense independents, and Republicans to join together and, let's do what we have to do to save democracy. Because, democracy itself is, even though we never thought it would be, at 247 years in as a country, democracy is on the ballot. It is a fragile piece of work, but it is worth debating. It's worth standing up for because, it gives us a certain freedom of thought, of expression that actually makes the country and the world a better place, because no one king for a day knows it all and knows what's best, for the whole world or for the whole kingdom. And so we welcome sound debate. We welcome working with our Republican colleagues on the right, and working against our Democratic colleagues on the left if they're not on the level or in the best position to move America forward on any given subject at any given point in time. So in order to solve, let's rise above party politics and look at the best ideals, whether they come from the right and or the left, and let the vote be had. And once that is done, once the vote has been had and has been counted and the winner's been established, then let's move forward as a country. And it really is just that simple. And let's get out of the sunken place that we've fallen into. So until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us. As I said, I hope we've been informative, and we encourage you to stay tuned and stay engaged in the process, because whether you know it or not, our livelihoods, our lifestyle, our way of life in this country is on the ballot. So let's get ready to rock the vote in 2024. And we look forward here at Soluble to bringing, eye-opening discussion, and we welcome all feedback, because we don't proclaim to know all the answers or to, have all the solutions to the problems that are affecting American politics today. But we're starting the conversation, and we're going to be here for the sake of the American people, to instill hope and not fear in a governmental system, when it's actually lived out, you know and not just words on paper, but it's actually lived out through we the people. It works for everybody, and that's what has, kept America afloat. But as I said, we're a young country, 247 years in. We've come a long ways, and it's always democracy. To get us closer to being that shining city on the hill, it's always a work in progress. So stay tuned and stay aware. Until the next time, this is Soluble signing out. We thank you for joining us tonight on this November the 2nd. Until we meet again, this is Soluble signing out. Good night and God bless. Thank you.